Hi everyone and welcome to Lipstick on a Rig. Today we are going to kick off our Christmas season by crocheting this mini stocking. And this stocking is great for an ornament or maybe a garland or just anywhere where you want to have a mini stocking. And this is functional, so you could put little treats inside of this if you wanted to. And this stocking is roughly 4 1/4 of an inch long and 3 inches wide. And for our mini stocking, I'm going to be working with size 4 medium weight acrylic yarn, and this is just the Big Twist Value brand, and the color is emerald green. I'll also be working with some leftover cream yarn. And we'll also be using a size F or 5 crochet hook, but if you don't have a crochet hook of this exact size, that's fine, just get as close as you can. So we're going to begin by attaching the yarn to our crochet hook using a slip knot, and then we're going to chain 3. And you want to keep your chains a little bit loose. And once you have your 3 chains in place, then you're going to turn them over so that you can access these back bumps back here. So this is not a regular part of your stitch, so it wouldn't be the front or the back loop. And you're going to insert your crochet hook in this first stitch's back bump. And you're going to place a slip stitch. And try not to tighten up your work too much while you're doing this. And you're going to place 1 slip stitch in your remaining 2 back bumps. And at the end of your row, you're going to chain 1 and turn your work. From here, we're going to place 1 slip stitch in each of these 3 back loop onlys. So we're going to skip our chain 1 and diving right into the back loop only of our first stitch, we're going to place a slip stitch. Then we're going to place 1 slip stitch in our remaining 2 back loop onlys. That last one can be a little tight. And at the end of your row, you're just going to chain 1 and turn your work. And from here, we're just going to repeat that last row. So we're going to skip our chain 1 and place 1 slip stitch in the back loop only of each stitch in our row. And again, at the end of our row, we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. So now we're just going to repeat that last row until we have a total of 14 ridges like this. And for your 14 ridges, make sure you include your very first ridge right here. And one thing to note, you want to make sure that you end your last row so that your crochet hook is on the opposite side of your starting tail. And next, we're just going to fold this in half like that. And make sure at the end of your last row that you placed your turning chain like you normally would. And we're going to insert our crochet hook up underneath that full first stitch, so both loops. And working with our first row here, we're going to insert our crochet hook up underneath the full stitch right here. And these should just be corresponding stitches. And we're going to yarn over and pull through all the loops on our crochet hook for a slip stitch. And next, we're going to repeat that process with our next 2 stitches. and again with our last stitch here. And before we switch colors and move on with the rest of our tiny stocking, we need to place our hanging loop. And this hanging loop is going to come from right here and come up like this. So you can create as many chains as you want, but I am going to place roughly 15 chains. So before you finish this off, this is what it's going to look like. So mine's just going to have a tiny bit sticking out. If you want yours to be longer, go ahead and add more chains. And if you want it to be shorter, of course, you can shorten that up as well. And once you have your number of chains in place, go ahead and get your next color ready. And what we're going to do is we're going to insert our crochet hook back up underneath these last 2 stitches where we just placed our chain from. So right here. And we are actually going to pull back up through with our next color. So go ahead and drop your cream. And all you're going to do is just secure your next color while you pull up through all the loops on your crochet hook. And then I like to tighten everything up. I'm going to go ahead and cut my cream color. And now I'm going to tie my 2 cream tails together once. And I'm going to line these tails up so that I can work over them. And next we are going to chain 1. And from here we're going to place 1 single crochet at the top of each of these ridges. We should have a total of 13 single crochets and a chain 1 when we get all the way around our row. And as you can see, we don't have traditional stitches, so you're just going to need to work inside the available loops right there. And I am going to work over my 2 cream tails for this. So to do that, insert your crochet hook in your first loop, and then drape your 2 tails over your crochet hook. Then as you work over these tails, they will become hidden inside your work. So go ahead and place your 13 single crochets at the top of each of your ridges, going all the way around your row. And if you get to the end of your row and you don't have 13 single crochets, that's fine. Just go ahead and make sure that you make any necessary adjustments in your last stitch. So either remove your stitch or add a second one so that you have 13 single crochet stitches. And from here, we're going to skip our chain 1. And we're going to place a slip stitch in the top of our first single crochet stitch. And we're going to chain 1. And from here, we're going to work over our green tail. And we're just going to place 1 single crochet in each stitch in our row. And that does include this very first stitch where we placed our slip stitch. So right here. So go ahead and place 1 single crochet in each stitch in your row, and when you get to the end of your row, you should have a total of 13 single crochets as well as a chain 1. And at the end of your row, you're going to skip your slip stitch and your chain 1, and you're going to slip stitch into the top of your first single crochet stitch. And from here, we're going to repeat that last row exactly. So we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet in each stitch in our row, and that does include that very first stitch where we placed our slip stitch. And just like before, at the end of your row, you're going to skip your slip stitch and your chain 1, and you're going to slip stitch into the top of your first single crochet stitch. From here, we're just going to keep repeating that last row to build the length of our stocking. So you can make your stocking as long as you want, just keep repeating that row. I went ahead and repeated that row until I had a total of 8 single crochet rows. And now we're going to begin to create our boot. So in order to do that and have this look nice, we need to slip stitch over to our first fold here where we have our loop. So all we're going to do is place 1 slip stitch in each of those stitches until we get to our fold. And you want to keep those slip stitches loose. From here, we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet in our first 6 stitches of our row. And that does include this last stitch where we placed our slip stitch. So this is going to mark the beginning of this row. And once you've placed 1 single crochet in your first 6 stitches, then you're going to place 5 single crochets in your 7th. And be careful that you move your stitches over. Sometimes this will cover up your next stitch if you're not careful. But once you have your 5 single crochets in your 7th stitch, then you're going to place 1 single crochet in your remaining stitches, so you should have 6 stitches left. So go ahead and place 1 single crochet in your remaining 6 stitches of this row. And at the end of your row, you should have a total of 17 stitches. And again, you're going to skip your last slip stitch and your chain 1, and you're going to slip stitch into the top of this first single crochet stitch. And you can see the boot is already forming. And from here, we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet in our first 8 stitches of this row. And again, that does include this first stitch where we placed our slip stitch. And once you have your 8 single crochets in place, then you're going to place 5 single crochets in your 9th stitch right here. And once you have your 5 single crochets in place, then you're going to place 1 single crochet in your remaining 8 stitches. And at the end of your row, you should have a total of 21 stitches. And again, we are going to skip our slip stitch and our chain 1, and we're going to place 1 slip stitch in the top of our first single crochet stitch. And for our next row, we're going to begin by chaining 1, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet in our first 10 stitches. And we're going to place 5 single crochets in our 11th stitch here. And then we're going to place 1 single crochet in the remaining 10 stitches of this row. And at the end of your row, you should have a total of 25 single crochet stitches. And again, we're going to skip our slip stitch and our chain 1, and we're going to slip stitch into the top of our first single crochet stitch. And for our next row, we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet in each stitch in our row. And at the end of your row, you should have a total of 25 single crochet stitches. And again, at the end of your row, you're going to skip your slip stitch and your chain 1, and you're going to slip stitch into the top of your first single crochet stitch. And for our next row, we're just going to repeat that last row again. So we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet in each stitch in our row. And at the end of your row, you're going to skip your slip stitch and your chain 1 and slip stitch into the top of your first single crochet stitch. And for our next row, we are just going to single crochet 2 stitches together at a time until we get to the end of our row. So we're going to skip this first stitch where we placed our slip stitch, and diving right into our next stitch, we're going to insert our crochet hook. Then we're going to yarn over and pull up through the stitch only. Then inserting our crochet hook in our next stitch, we're just going to yarn over and pull back up through that stitch. And you should have 3 loops on your crochet hook. So from here, we're just going to yarn over and drop all 3 loops. So just repeat that process going all the way around your row. And now all we're going to do is slip stitch these 2 edges together. To do that, you're just going to insert your crochet hook up underneath your next stitch. And then working on this other edge right here, you're going to insert your crochet hook in that corresponding stitch. And this does not have to be perfect by any means. Then you're just going to yarn over and drop all the loops on your crochet hook for a slip stitch. And you're just going to repeat that for every stitch going along this line right here. And once you've joined your 2 stocking ends together, then you're just going to cut and tie off your yarn. And next, you're just going to turn your stocking inside out. And now you have completed your tiny stocking. And check the links in the description for my other Christmas crochet crafts. Please let me know in the comments below if this video worked for you or if you need any further assistance, and I'll be happy to try to help. If this video helped you, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel, Lipstick on a Rig. Thank you so much for working on this with me today, and I hope you have a wonderful, awesome day.